On today's episode, How to Not Die at World's Toughest Mudder, Part 3, with Molly Kenneth. This is the World's Toughest Podcast. Welcome to the World's Toughest Podcast, where we talk about any obstacle course race you'd like, as long as that's World's Toughest Mudder. Each week we talk to members of the WTM community and share stories of success and failure in the single greatest event in OCR. My name is Will Hicks, and this is the World's Toughest Podcast. Welcome back to World's Toughest Podcast. Thank you for listening. My name is Will Hicks. You're listening to the number one rated obstacle course racing podcast in the world, is listeners like you. Hey, before we start, I want to tell you, text the word tough to the number 22828. Text the word tough to the number 22828. And that will subscribe you to our email list. And I have been putting together a Black Friday OCR deals list that is going to blow your socks off. So I've reached out to probably 200 company. I'm not joking. Like, some of them got back to me. Some of them were like, yeah, we're not doing anything because of the opt-outside program that REI is doing. A lot of them have gotten back with me, and we're going to have the best Black Friday's deal list for OCR products you've ever seen in your life. So text the word tough to 22828 so I can send that to you. Today on our show, How to Not Die at World's Toughest Mudder, Part 3. If you're like, what? Where's parts 1 and 2? I missed them. Part 2 was a year ago, and Part 1 was 2 years ago. So you can find those in our feed real easily. How to Not Die at World's Toughest Mudder. This is the third year Molly Kenneth and I have sat down, talked about safety and self-care, self-rescue. Previously, we've talked about overhydration. We talked about hypothermia, the first 2 episodes. So I'm excited to bring this to you practically on the eve of World's Toughest Mudder. It's this weekend, you guys. Are you ready? Probably not. Some of you have messaged me like, hey, what's up with Elite Week? When's that happening? And some of you have sent me your jokes, more like a late week, Elite Week. And those are hilarious. Thanks. Got an idea. How about I write the jokes and you keep listening? But we're going to do something different this year. We're going to do Elite Week the week after World's Toughest Mudder to mix it up. I've still got more stuff for you this week. Lots of stuff to help you get ready for World's Toughest Mudder. I have an interview with Coach that I am looking forward to airing. Coach and Sean Corvell are two of the, they're legitimately inspiring. Like, I talk with them and I feel like I'm a better person for that conversation. Anytime I get a chance to talk with those two guys, or even listen to those two guys talk, I enjoy it. So, and then we got some more stuff coming up. Some other community members that we haven't heard from before that I want to get out to you before World's Toughest Mudder. So last week I ran Tough Mudder SoCal, just kind of a fun, last thing before World's Toughest Mudder. There were a bunch of members of the community out there. It was great. While I was in the start line shoot, it was on Sunday morning, I realized that I missed Saturday. I had some other stuff I was doing, but on Sunday I went out there and I realized that was the first regular Tough Mudder I've been to in almost 2 years, which sounds crazy, right? We do this podcast, done World's Toughest Mudder, done tons of toughest mudders, lots of other runs and fitness. But as far as regular Tough Mudder, for whatever reason, it's been almost 2 years, like a year and 9 months. In fact, the last regular length Tough Mudder that I did before Tough Mudder SoCal was Tougher Mudder Las Vegas 2 years ago when I tore my ACL and I missed World's Toughest Mudder 2017. So I was kind of surprised. I was thinking about that in the start sheet, like, oh my gosh, I haven't run a regular Tough Mudder since that, 2 years ago when I hurt my knee and I missed the World Subs. So I'm out there and it's great. Like it's if you haven't run the first wave with the World's Toughest Mudder community, it's great. Like they are interacting with Sean. Like Sean's given his thing about if you can't swim, don't go in the water. And the entire, 15, 20 guys from the World Subs community, they're there at the front of the start chute. They always yell, "What?" Sean repeats, "If you can't swim, don't go in the water." What? If you cannot swim, don't go in the water. I have to tell every time I run Tough Mudder, every time I do a Tough Mudder, someone forgets they can't swim. And it's great. And then right before the first wave goes off, the community kind of makes a single file line facing the giant start wave. And the giant start wave kind of runs past them on both sides. And the community is giving high fives on both sides. And this line's like, 15, 20 people deep. It's great. It was I'm so glad I was there for that part of the race. And then Travis Langness is doing his 50th event. So he's doing every single obstacle, even the electrical ones, and helping people, and just it's Sunday fun day, right? It was great event until it wasn't. When I was, and again, I don't like talking about, you feel free to skip forward if you're not, don't care. It doesn't hurt my feelings. I was going over across Funky Monkey and I was doing really well. And I'm not sure, honestly, I'm still not exactly sure what happened. I'd made it all the way to the top. And I was transitioning. I'd made it, past the first with the horizontal wheel and the first bit of the big vertical wheel. And I was transitioning from the big vertical wheel to the small vertical wheel. And I just heard something pop, like break, like the sound of a wet twig snapping. And so I shouted and I dropped in the water immediately. And I walked it in. Funky Monkey was, 3.5, 4 miles into the course. So I walked it in and drove to a Walgreens, went to medical, got an ice pack, went to Walgreens, bought a sling, drove home. And then on Monday, I got x-rays. They came back clean, like no bones were broken. The bones didn't hurt. It was like the muscle, the bicep, right in the middle of the bicep on my right arm. And so I got an MRI and that came back. And then I met with a doctor a couple days ago. And I asked them, what's the damage and what is it? What are my options? Like, what's the recovery? I got this World Subs Mudder coming up in a week. And they said, well, you can't run that race. That's not an option. Okay. Well, okay. What about the injury? It is a torn or a severed tendon. Where the bicep connects to the elbow. And he said, or she said, essentially I have two options. The damage is done to the tendon, right? What's done is done. If I can not get surgery and my muscles will kind of compensate for the missing tendon, and I will, regain strength and I have full mobility. I can, move my fingers and rotate my wrists and do everything I need to do. And in fact, as I'm talking right now, there's no pain as long as I don't put any weight on it or put a load on that arm. But as it heals, I will never regain full strength. In fact, I'll lose 20% of my like maximum strength for the rest of my life if I do not get the surgery. Okay. What are my other options? Your other option is you get the surgery and you will regain full strength eventually, but you will not have full mobility in your right hand for the rest of your life. So imagine that decision. I can have full mobility, but 20% less strength, or I can have full strength, but reduced mobility. So as I'm talking to you, it's Tuesday before World's Toughest Mudder, and I am going in tomorrow on a Wednesday to get a second opinion from another doctor. And, you know, based on what that doctor says, if he says the same thing, then I have a decision to make. If he says you absolutely need to do the surgery, this is, then I probably will. And if that's the case, then I'll miss World's Toughest Mudder because I'll be recovering from surgery. Maybe I can fly in for the brunch on Monday. I don't know. So that's what I'm, kind of World's Toughest Mudder already off the table. Won't get my 50 miles this year. That's cool. No worries. I was not cool with it at first. So again, it's Tuesday as I'm talking. It's been 9 days since this happened. And, I had a serious injury 2 years ago, right? But I don't know why this one has messed with my head more, like mentally. I'm not sure why. Like that one, I had a lot more reduced mobility, but this one I can still walk around just fine. But I'm super, super weak in my right arm. Like I can pick up my phone, but I can't pick up an iPad. I can pick up a small bottle of water, but I can't pick up a big bottle of water right now. I don't want to complain. I have nothing to complain about. I'm healthy. I still have a job. Wife and kids love me. I am literally the luckiest person you'll ever meet in your life. Like I have zero complaints about life, right? But I got a big decision to make that's going to affect, my life until I die. And so that's why I'm not running World's Toughest Mudder this year. Don't feel sorry for me. I'm fine. I just read an article by Faye Vincent. He was the commissioner of baseball when I was a kid. I remember, reading stories about him. He's in a wheelchair now, and he talks about in his article, Wall Street Journal. You can look it up. I think it was on Saturday's paper. He sees people that can walk, people older than him that can walk, and he's jealous of them. He doesn't go out at night, doesn't go to restaurants, doesn't go to shows because he's embarrassed and he doesn't want to inconvenience people. But then he knows he has friends that are blind or that are deaf, and they look at him and they're jealous of him because he can see and he can hear. And so anyway, so I'm not going to run. I can't run Worlds this year. Next year, totally on the table, right? I think though, I may have retired from the regular distance Tough Mudders. I just think, Worlds is the race I care about. Worlds is the most important race of the year. If I don't even know, why was I out there? Why was I even out there on Sunday, right? What was I doing? What was the point? If it was a binary choice, would you like to run half of a course on Sunday or run World's Toughest Mudder and go for 50 miles? That's an obvious choice, right? Well, of course I'm going to skip Sunday and go for... So why was I even out there? I can't answer that question. I regret it immensely, and I still hope and pray that I wake up and I'm like, oh, it's Monday morning, and I slept through the race yesterday, or slept through Tough Mudder SoCal. Oh, well, World's Toughest is coming up in 2 weeks. It's not going to happen, but I'm... Anyway, all that to say, I've been going for 15 minutes. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, you guys. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. I am still looking forward to hopefully seeing all of you in Atlanta. And if you really want to run World's Toughest Mudder in Atlanta, make sure you do it this year. Molly Kenneth is a friend of the show, very knowledgeable medical. We talk about our qualifications right when we start off. Guys, the most important part of World's Toughest Mudder is your personal safety. Do you guys remember, like, I don't know, a long time ago, like 3 weeks ago when we had Yancey Culp on the show? And I said, Yancey, what's the most important part of training for World's Toughest Mudder with 30 days to go? And he said, do you guys remember what he said? The most important part is don't get hurt. So that was good advice. It's got to be cold in Atlanta. Bring your neoprene. Let's talk with Molly Kenneth about some more advice for self-care and keeping yourself safe. How to not die at World's Toughest Mudder. It's time to talk with Molly Kenneth. Let's go to the phones. Molly Kenneth, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Will. It's good to talk to you.
Molly, we have a once-a-year ongoing series called How to Not Die at World's Toughest Mudder. This is chapter 3.
It sure is.
So the first year we talked about overhydration. Second year we talked about hypothermia. What is our topic this year? How to not die at World's Toughest Mudder, colon.
So we're gonna touch briefly on both of those previous matters. There's plenty of new information. I've worked different. My role is a little different this year than it's been in the past. So I kind of want to briefly cover some general things about me, about my relationship with Tough Mudder, how medical is delivered at events in general, course specifics, and then I have quite a few firsthand stories to fill in to really make some of these points a little bit more personalized.
Okay, so let's jump in just real quick. What's your we talked about it before, but what's your background in medicine?
So I'm a board-certified family nurse practitioner in Sacramento, and I'm a former wilderness backpacking and whitewater raft guide.
Okay, and what have you done with World's Toughest in the past?
So this is World's Toughest number 4. The first, I found myself in the med tent in Las Vegas. The second, I was on the course. Actually, finished the full 24 hours. Last year, I was actually interesting. So last year, we were in Atlanta, and I was scheduled in medical overnight. And when I kind of just hustled by the start line, I realized that at the start line, there were no medical staff. There were 2 folks in yellow T-shirts. And the folks in yellow T-shirts are hired temporary staff. And what we usually see them doing, we might see them at an obstacle like giving out water or changing out trash bags, but probably not equipped to be doing a neuro check. At that point, I fired them. I took over that spot. I felt pretty strongly that it should be handled by somebody with medical training. And the medical tent saw 300 patients last year and was just truly overwhelmed. So I was by myself doing the neuro checks all night last year. And then this year will be World's Toughest number 4, and I will be in a role not totally yet defined, but helping wherever I can, helping in the pit, and then providing some support to medical wherever they might need it, where their athletes might need it, kind of whatever I can do.
So talking about how to not die with self-care and caring for others, what should people know about that?
Yeah, so it's been a great, as I mentioned, I really overextended myself last year. At the cessation of World's Toughest Mudder, pretty much just was exhausted like everybody else. Even in the weeks that followed, I kind of tried to make sense of the event, but it was pretty soon that the medical contractor changed and the administration at Tough Mudder changed. And I kind of went underground. I felt like I had done everything I could do to try and educate and support. And I just maybe I need a break. Maybe I need to just do something different. Around June, I started hearing about this Kyle guy. And people were saying, yeah, he's super receptive. He's super nice. So I reached out to Tough Mudder in about June and started talking with them, and just really wanted to share what had worked. One of the things I really advocated for was doctors. Now, you get doctors. What my point was is you have athletes that are extending themselves over a 24-hour period, getting into all kinds of strange physiological trouble. I said, they've got doctor-level problems. They need doctor-level care. And that was really well received. The other side of that is, though, when you have doctors on the course, you have somebody there that can say, yeah, you're fine. Keep going. You've got somebody who can do a relocation, who can do sutures, who can do like a few things, because we don't ever want to say, in our society, we're very hesitant to say, yeah, you're fine, go ahead. If all you have is an EMT there, like you would have at a normal Tough Mudder course, you have no choice. You are disqualified. So the only place you can go for care is the emergency department. By having doctors and nurses and a full crew on site in Atlanta, not only are people going to get great care, but the idea is that maximizes their ability to return to the event. We do have some of the similar issues, right? And I'll get over some of those. I want to kind of address a concept, which is this idea of endurance medicine. Like, why does it, what do you think about when I say endurance medicine? Like, what am I talking about?
Endurance medicine, I think of the people last 2 years ago, I hurt my ACL, tore my ACL in Vegas, and I had a guy, I don't know if it was a doctor or nurse or just some guy with a t-shirt, but they treated me in the tent out there. It wasn't an endurance event. It was just 10 miles, but I think of kind of field care.
Yeah, totally. And that's a great example. And it's also, so I have a friend, he's the medical director for Everything Cool. And he uses the term, backcountry versus front country. Backcountry, you're off in Yosemite, you're in Arches, you're in somewhere far away. Your access to care is limited. Front country would be your marathon, your something that's happening on the city street. What happens to the human body when you project it out over 24 hours of continuous activity is that what isn't a big deal over 4 or 6 hours can become a very big deal. And the problem is that if your medical staff are city focused and front country focused, that their care can actually backfire. I was talking to Jason Rulo the other day, and he said that Navy SEAL trainees are encouraged to not seek medical care outside of their training facility because their training is unique. What's going on with their body is unique. And what medical services are provided at events runs a really big range. I crewed Badwater consultancy for John Glines and Charlie Hoppert in April. They provide no medical care and no food, no water, no nothing. You bring all your own. So that's one way to handle it. I've been to Western states a number of times, and they are their finish line med tent's pretty intense, and a lot of good research has come out of that. And then I've also was at a 100-mile event, and I asked for their med kit, and they threw me a bottle of ibuprofen. And I'm thinking, are you trying to kill people? Ibuprofen is one of the worst things you could give someone in an endurance event. This would be an example of ibuprofen on an average day. If you have a headache, something hurts, that's really quite fine. Kidneys are what clear the ibuprofen. And if you are running for an extended period, you're super active, kidneys are working really hard, ibuprofen is going to decrease the flow to the kidneys, increase your chances of acute kidney injury. That's super relevant in endurance medicine. It may not be that relevant in your day-to-day life.
So when you're talking about medical doctors, are there going to be medical doctors on site this year?
Yes, there are.
So even if they're front country, back country, they're still doctors though, right? Like, I feel like if I get hurt, I want to see a doctor instead of a guy in a t-shirt.
Absolutely. You want to see a doctor. You want to see somebody that's familiar with the injuries and accidents that happen specific to your event. That is not always the case. I'll give you a couple of examples of where that has failed. And I think the great thing is that knowing where where things have failed in the past, there's always learning. So in a Hawaii event, there was the local protocol allowed EMTs to give out ibuprofen if somebody signed a waiver. So there was a disconnect. You and I know, and everybody who wants to go back to our podcast number 1 is going to know why ibuprofen is such a terrible idea. But to those medics at that time, they weren't bad people. They weren't doing bad things. There was just a disconnect between their environment and their local protocol. The second one would be that I'm thinking of is I was at a triathlon and a guy got really hypothermic on the swim. He didn't have a wetsuit. And so I got him a plate of food, and the EMT got between me and him and was like, "You can't give him that. He'll get cramps." I'm thinking, you've completely made that up. The body's a machine. The machine needs fuel. Give the guy some food. He's not going to get cramps. He's actually going to feel better. The other one I wanted to bring up was recently at Tahoe, there was a very cold event, and there was some discussion about obstacles to keep open or closed. And without getting into that, I would say companies have algorithms for how to make good safety decisions. I don't know if this is part of this, but it should be. What are the limitations of your medical contractor? How many staff did they bring? How much area resources do they have? There's a young man named Noah Rutherford. Now, every time I use a person's name is with their full express permission. I won't talk about anybody without that. He was running this event. He went into the water. He became very symptomatic for acute hypothermia. So not only was he shivering, but his brain wasn't really working very well. The definition of hypothermia from the Wilderness Medicine Society is that the cooling of the brain leads to irritability, confusion, apathy, poor decision-making, lethargy, somnolence, and eventually coma. So he's acting kind of like a crazy person. The medics on site got a hold of him, which was great. They took off his hat, his gloves, his shoes, and his socks. Well, when we take somebody's clothes off, that's great if we've got somewhere warm for them to go, but not great in this situation because they didn't have any blankets for him. His gear was synthetic, so it would have actually helped him. And he was put in a worse situation than when he had been. The response time to get him somewhere else was over an hour, and at no point was he offered any food. So what we do one place, your kids go out and jump around in the rain and play in the puddles, right? And they're all cold and they come in. What are you going to do with them?
Stick them in the bathtub so they don't mess up my house.
Exactly. You're going to get their wet clothes off. But somewhere like World's Toughest Mudder, unless those clothes are cotton, there's no place for any cotton at World's Toughest Mudder. But unless those clothes are cotton, you're going to want to avoid stripping those clothes unless you're in an environment where you're in a pretty warm environment. You can change out your clothes, add some clothes, add some food, and then keep going. There's a story that came out of World's Toughest last year. I was just talking to Victoria Jackson-Graham yesterday. She's the person I know that got the sickest at last Worlds. She, upon arrival at the ER, she had a core body temperature of 88 degrees. So it's a solid 10 degrees. She was unresponsive. She required intubation and dialysis. She did ask herself, how in the world did you get so cold? And this is what I asked her. The human body, when you first start shivering, that's just cold stress. We're not going to worry about that. We're just like, you're either going to warm up or you're not. Okay. If you're talking, you're making sense. That's good. So she was shivering, and here's the biggest risk factor in Victoria's illness. She's a physician, and physicians and nurses and medical staff are terrible patients, horrible patients. So she knew kind of what was happening. She's also probably the single most stubborn person I've ever met. She knows I'm going to say that too. And she kept running. And so she'd go in and she'd go out again. And the first thing I did when I heard that she'd gone to the hospital and was hospitalized in the ICU, intubated in such terrible condition, the first thing I did when I could reach her was, did I mess up? You passed me. I was out there by myself. Did I mess up? And she said, no, when I passed you, I was okay. Plus, I'm a pretty good actor, so I just knew that I was all right. But as that lap went on, I became more and more cold and I stopped shivering. So the shivering's okay. The shivering's the body's wanting to make heat. The stopping of shivering is actually really perilous.
So what should she have done differently?
Ideally, maybe been a little less stubborn, maybe asked for help, which is another thing that doctors and nurses maybe aren't so great about. She did know that she was in trouble. She did make it back into the pit. And at that point, I think she went through something called after drop, which is the body in a cold environment will shunt the blood to the core and kind of leave the arms, the feet and the hands, arms and legs kind of to their own devices. They're not crucial. Your brain is crucial. Your heart is crucial. Your guts are crucial. But, so what happens is we pool colder blood in the extremities. When she got into the pit and she started to warm up, that cold peripheral blood started to circulate back toward her heart. So she was conscious and talking in her tent with her pit, and they were feeding her things, and she remembers. And then, bam, she doesn't remember. So the only explanation I've been able to come to with that is after drop, is the way that cold blood came back. So this leads into the bigger plan at World's Toughest Mudder. So initially, I was like, neurocheck at the start, neurocheck at the start, neurocheck at the start. And I also, by the way, wanted the cliff open in Las Vegas. I didn't get that, unfortunately. But I wanted to check at the start because I was like, well, hey, I wanted to have some control over who was going out. It seemed like that was make the most sense. My concern was if you have somebody at the finish and they're screening for people that look like garbage, they're going to be screening everybody. They're going to pull over everybody. I've been reassured it's not that cut and dry. And what Tough Mudder has that I don't have and you don't have is that they have the ability to look at all their injury and illness data from last year and plan from a place of what happened, how do I prevent it? So when I think of they're putting the neurocheck at the finish, I think of somebody like Victoria or somebody. I said, what would they have seen if they've had somebody there? What would they have seen? She said, they would have snagged me right away. She said I was mumbling, I was ambulatory, but not well, and so I just realized for myself I had to trust Tough Mudder. I had to say, okay, you have more data than I have, and you're going to build a course that makes sense to prevent what you know that I might not know.
You mentioned getting help from your pit crew. We talked about helping other people, that are out on the course. What if and again, the theme of this talk, kind of self-care and caring for others. What if you're out there on the course doing a lap and you see somebody that needs help?
I encourage people to carry food because it does allow you to give some food away. Some high-fat food is going to be a really quick way to perk somebody up, to bring some kilocalories into their system. Stinger waffles are pack easily in the chest of a wetsuit. Those Justin's, I think, or goo packs, Justin's peanut butter, almond butter, slide in the sleeve of a wetsuit really easily. And that's good for you, and that's good for anybody else. I think you don't panic when you see somebody shivering, and you don't panic when you feel cold, because both of those things are going to happen. What you watch out for is when people lose the ability to make any sense. At that point, you have to ask yourself, where am I on the course? Is it reasonable? Can I help this person? Because the same rules apply. If that person can limp in or you can limp them in, then they are not disqualified. They can go get warmed up, get out of their wet stuff, go sleep for 8 hours, eat 12 pancakes, and then come back out in the morning. If they've come in under their own power, then as long as they are cleared So what's going to happen that's different is there will be a system of neurocheck that is more formal. It will be at the finish. As it's going to explain to me, it's going to be pretty quick. It's not going to be like a big slowdown, and it's there to catch the people that really need to be caught. If you're hurt or hypothermic, you can go over the med tent's going to be right there at the finish, and there will be staff there to assess you. When I talk, so I emailed with Kyle, and then there's a man, Brendan Quinn, who's actually overseeing the whole medical production at Worlds this year. And when I talked to him, I had only one question at the top of my list, and that was, will there be a space that's heated for people for the purpose of changing clothes and getting out again? So let's say you're pulled over for hypothermia at the finish. You're going to get triaged by the med tent. And if you're deemed like, yeah, you're cold, you need to warm up, your crew's here, your gear's here, I see that you have warm clothes to put on, or at the discretion of that provider, there's going to be something called a mess tent. This is 100% their idea, and it's totally brilliant. And what that allows you to do is it's not somewhere to hang out and quote unquote get warm forever, but it allows you, so you've got your 3-2 on, right? And you want to switch out to your 5-3. You're already freezing. You're already shivering. It's a pretty bad idea to strip and be exposed to the cold. Ideally, you're going to go somewhere like the mesh tent and strip and get your warmer clothes on, your warmer gear on while you're eating and your crew is feeding you. And this is actually something that I did with Anais Wright last year. This was before I went over to the start line. Came across a woman standing, shivering, crying, and muttering. I mean, these are all bad signs, right? Like, where's your gear? Where's your stuff? So I was like, you're coming with me. I took her to the med tent, and I basically had to barricade her from any kind of intervention. And I'm thinking, I'm either going to turn this around or I'm not. So it's really important that people know when their athlete is that hypothermic, how to turn it around. And then always err on the side of caution, right? If you don't think you can turn around, if you're on the course and you don't think you can help that person, or if you're at risk of hurting yourself, or it's mile 0.5, then maybe you don't try. Maybe you just flag medical, and that's how that person's race ends. Maybe you can get them through. So I take Anais over, and I'm like, okay, I start feeding her, right? Super high fat food. She stops crying. I position her. They have these hot blower things. I position her at the end of the hot blower tube, like an exhaust tube, but no exhaust. And I start loading her with gear, loading her with calories. 5 minutes goes by. She's not crying anymore. 10 minutes goes by. Color starts to come back from her face. 15 minutes goes by. And the medical staff are kind of starting to look at me like, okay, what are you doing? And I'm thinking, well, we're kind of winging it is what we're doing. And she rallied. And she's from somebody who started totally debilitated in the pit. She went out and got another 25 miles. And it was amazing. She just needed that opportunity to turn things around. I can't say what's going to happen on the course out there for each and every person. I really hope you don't push yourself to the point that you're really in danger of hurting yourself. There will be people watching for that kind of thing. So we've got finish line, we've got a med tent, you've got the mess tent, which you can access without penalty, without concern. And then over at the start line, there's going to be another check. My understanding is that's going to be more of a like headlamp flasher bib. Did you eat? Did you change clothes? What are you wearing? What I noticed last year is people would come up to me and say, hey, oh yeah, I was cold, but I'm warm now because I just warmed up. I just was by the heater. I was like, well, what did you eat and what more clothes did you put on so you're not going to have the same outcome when you get out there? And if they hadn't eaten and they hadn't put on more clothes, I'd turn around and put something else on.
I found last year the coldest I got was when I stopped in the pit. Like as long as we were moving on the course, I was fine. But when we sat down to like eat some food real quick before that's when I got cold, was in the pit area.
Absolutely. So you even had your fluffy jacket?
No, you know what? I had my dry robe, but I didn't want to wear it because I didn't want to get it dirty. And because we were
Right.
dirty, we were nasty. So
Yes.
I saved it for at the end of the race. But even with that on there, like we had, the space blankets, and we had blankets and towels and, everything to keep, to wrap us up. But it was just so cold. Now it doesn't look like it's going to be as cold this year, but it's still going to be cold.
Right.
But
yeah.
I guess my thought is, like, if you're going to get cold in the pit area, so you need to get out there and get moving again.
Absolutely. I agree. Absolutely agree. So having somewhere, having a plan with your crew, and it kind of brings up the point of this, this 2.5 mile quick pit idea. There have been some concerns running around that this was a heated Club Med type of situation. My understanding from what I heard on your show is it's really like pass somebody's food over the barricade, get out of there. It's totally optional. You don't need to use it, but it might be really helpful to you. And that's all it is. That's all it's designed to do, is to be an option. Coming into the pit, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're slowing down, and that's, I'm sure, part of what happened for Victoria, right? Is she was no longer moving. But the only thing I couldn't quite understand how she got so sick. Yeah, it's. I think it's great that what you did. I mean, I think that you guys, you just kept moving. I mean, you outlasted people.
Well, that was more of a survival thing by that point. So what are some things runners can do, especially maybe if it's their first year? How can they prepare to take care of themselves?
Yeah, I think that, gear is always going to be huge. Synthetics, underwear, bra, socks are all synthetic. Having a variety of gear, different layers, thicknesses of synthetic layers, different wetsuit thicknesses, and then a cheap wind layer. Hands and feet and head are always covered. Food is available, and you take some food on course. And maybe you haven't heard this way, and maybe you learn about it as you go. I think plan on being cold to a degree, but keep moving and do your best. The other things that kind of have cropped up lately, I've noticed. I saw it. I pit in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago, and things I saw that came at the end of World's Toughest last year. People mess around sometimes with their electrolytes and taking in supplemental salt or not taking in supplemental salt. My recommendation there is have salty foods available to you if you want them. Your body will let you know. Exercise-associated hyponatremia is low salt due to intense activity. And first sign you're going to get of that is the swollen hands. Swollen hands and nausea. So I started seeing that at the end of Worlds last year, even though it wasn't a super hot environment, it was still there. And at that point, I want to ask somebody, what have you been eating? Because your hands can swell because you've had too much salt. And you shouldn't really be taking like salt tab. You increase your cardiac workload, you increase your weight, and you just end up having to work too hard. Your hands get swollen. It makes it really hard to grip obstacles. There's kind of a happy medium there. It's a little tricky that swollen hands are not enough salt and too much salt, and a lot of other reasons. So just kind of you need to tell us about pickle juice and why do you use it in an acute cramp?
You know what? I love pickle juice. I don't know who turned me on to it years ago, but a lot of people, when they get cramps, once you're already cramping up, it's, you should train and you should be hydrated, but once you're already cramping up, you need to treat the cramp. And there's three main ways people treat it: with salt packets, just like those little things you get from, Burger Place for your fries, or mustard packs, which you're just eating them straight. You're just like putting them in your mouth and it tastes terrible. Or my favorite, and I think it works the best, is the pickle juice. And you can get these small, like 2.5 ounce bottles off of Amazon, and there's still time to order them. And when you just put that in your mouth, I don't know the science behind it, but what I've read is that the brine, the salty flavor, it tricks your brain into immediately releasing the cramp, even before like you've swallowed it, like before it's actually affecting your body. Your brain thinks it's oh wow, we're taking care of cramps now, aren't we? So it actually, for me at least, it works faster than salt and mustard. So I just made a note right now. I need to order more pickle juice.
Oh, that's fantastic. No, this is perfectly well explained. It's the neuromuscular theory of cramping, which is that grindiness hits the back of your throat and it triggers a response to release the cramp. And it's 100% a proven thing. You drink fluid when you're thirsty. There's no need to drink X amount of intake. Even to bring in sodium, like any of your products out there, none of them have enough sodium. They're all less salty than you. You can get yourself into a whole heap of trouble. But in an acute cramp, yes, they're in like the 5-hour energy shots, that kind of container.
Yeah, the same size.
Juices you're talking about?
Yep,
absolutely. And so those are fantastic. A couple other things I was thinking about, if most of us in the U.S. probably should be all up to date on our tetanus shot. Tetanus is super rare. There's like 30 cases a year, but it's a bacteria that lives in the soil. Turns out you're probably going to get scratched and whatnot. So if you're not up to date on your tetanus, probably be a fine idea to do contact lenses. We did have a guy get amoebas in his eyes, not at Worlds, but at another obstacle course event, by being exposed to what is naturally occurring in the soil, but then leaving those contact lenses in for too long. If you wear contact lenses on the course, as soon as you're done, throw them away, or at least clean them. I would throw them away. Or you can use athletic glasses. Every year, following World Service March, you have to understand, especially if you haven't done this, you're looking at this thing objectively and how your body might respond when it's over. That you get something called WTM flu, which is nausea and fatigue and coughing up a lung and shave out your nose. It could be like anything, just general case of yuck. So I wanted to touch on a little bit of when to seek care and ER versus the urgent care. And I draw a pretty hard line here. I've worked in urgent care, and I think urgent care in this case is fine for crew. It's fine for somebody, a crew with an acute problem. It's all athletes who are feeling so sick systemically that they need medical care should go to the ER. And the reason I say that is that the ER has the ability to run your labs right then. When you exercise for 24 hours, you can get into things like rhabdomyolysis, just the excessive breakdown of muscle tissue to the point that can lead to kidney failure. You can get into exercise-associated hyponatremia. You can get into some of these really gnarly things that have sort of vague complaints. Pretty much every year on the board after Worlds, I put my phone number up on the board, and I'm like, look, if you don't know what to do, or you need somebody to talk to you and to go to the ER, if you need somebody to meet you at the ER, call me. Nobody's ever called me. And so it's just, if you're going to go, if you have doubts. Now, what I do often get is messages 2 or 3 and 4 days out that say, I saw a doctor and they said I should have been hospitalized. Or I get a message that says, I went to the ER, I'm hospitalized. So just understand, this is the real deal. And you can take care of yourself by following some of the things we're talking about. On the World's Toughest Mudder Facebook group, there's great lists of resources, gear and pacing and what do I eat and what do you eat, and really great resources. Ask the people around you. For the veterans, I would say, take care of the people around you when you see them in line, when you see them at dinner. You're going to know who they are. You're going to see that gear. So make it your goal to save someone's race, because it's really not that hard if you have the resources. And I think the Tough Mudder's done a great job of positioning medical and providing like an unlimited amount of time, or the mess tent, or some of these things that they're giving you to make your race successful. You can help make someone else's race successful as well.
Molly, how can people contact you or find you on social media if they have more questions?
I was just thinking about that, and I was thinking about an article I wrote for the OCR report, which was something about, this World's Toughest Mudder was all about gear and food. And I'm not like on the social media stuff so much, but if you hit me up on Facebook Messenger, I will respond. Absolutely. Especially after the event, if you're confused, concerned, whatever, look on the board. My phone number will be there. And we really we're just truly. I rode the entire Grand Canyon 4 times, and it's 223 miles. And in that, you are in your little group. You might overlap with other groups, but you're a mile down in the Grand Canyon, and you have just that group to rely upon. Now, we're not that isolated, but it's still a good frame of reference. Like, can I take care of myself? Can I take care of the people around me? And can we have a great time?
Molly Kenneth, thanks much.
You bet.
Special thanks to Molly Kenneth for appearing in this episode. Well done, Molly. Thanks for coming back. I'll talk to you again in a year. It's not true. We talk more than that. Be sure to leave a review for the show on Apple Podcasts or Amazon.com. If you come up to me in Atlanta and say, "Hey, Will, love the show. Can I get a sticker?" You had better, the next words out of your mouth are, "I already left a review for the podcast." And then you'll get a sticker. Looking forward to seeing you there. If you are thinking of me on Wednesday, I would happily accept your prayers for wisdom with the decision I have to make. Surgery or not, good times. I will talk with you soon. Go spend time with someone you love, especially before World's Toughest Mudder.